Hi, my name's Emily Morrison. I'm the Consumer Horticulture Agent in Onslow County with the North Carolina Cooperative Extension. And today I'm going to show you around in our Discovery Gardens, which is a 4-acre public demonstration garden that we have here in Onslow County. And it's a partnership between the Cooperative Extension, the Master Gardener volunteers, and also Onslow County government. So the garden is here for several reasons. One is that it's a place that people can come out during daylight hours and enjoy the fresh air. And also we're highlighting plants that grow well in this area. So we're here to teach people about what you can grow, both landscape plants and fruits and vegetables. So the Discovery Gardens has been an idea for many years now, and this area actually was a textile factory several years ago. And so when this site was purchased by Onslow County, it was just an industrial site. And so the Master Gardener volunteers at the time, with their agent, they wanted to turn this into a public garden space. And so it's come a long way from concrete and debris into a garden space. And I'm going to show you some of the different areas and what we're trying to achieve in the different areas today. So follow me. So right now we're standing in the summer house, and you can see it's a really pretty spot. We had an ornamental pond that you see behind me installed, and it was completed in 2019, complete with a little waterfall, and all of the rocks that are making up this pond were brought in from the state, North and South Carolina. So they're all technically local, and the pond itself is really nice because it supports a lot of different wildlife. We'll see a lot of insects like dragonflies, and we'll see frogs and turtles and snakes, and I've seen a great blue heron. We know we have raccoons and different critters that come and use the water as a source. And then we also introduce some koi fish into the pond to help to control the algae. So this is a really nice and peaceful spot. And people can actually rent this space out for events like weddings or family reunions. So this is kind of a multi-purpose space. And around the pond, we're working on landscaping and trying to put as many native plants as possible to show people who may have ponds at their homes how they can also landscape with native plants and to support wildlife. So we've been working on getting the gardens moving forward since about 2012 was the groundbreaking. So this has been a huge project, getting all the different areas of the gardens installed, and the first layer that went into the ground were the trees. So you'll see a lot of the trees as we're going through the gardens are not huge because they were planted within about the past 10 years or so. And then we'll get the shrub layer in the ground and then build out with our perennials and other plants. So the other thing that we've had to do is get our walkways installed. So these walkways are permeable. So water that we do get heavy rains here in eastern North Carolina will actually drain through the walkways. So it's about 3 inches thick of pea gravel. And then we purchased a product called clingstone, which is it's like a resin that coats all of the pebbles and it solidifies it, but it also allows the water to drain through. So that's an important part of our stormwater permit, is having that additional permeable surface in the gardens. So something that's been important in this process is maintaining as much of the native vegetation that was already here as possible, because we do want to encourage the community to see the importance of the native plant communities that are here. So we do have a really nice wood line, and there's a little creek that runs back behind it here. So there's a nice wood line that you can walk around, and there's a boardwalk where you feel like you're walking through the woods. And eventually we'll have a lot of these plants labeled, so that will help people learn to identify some of our native plants in the area. Not all of our plants that are here in the Discovery Gardens are native. So there are a lot of landscape plants that do grow well in this area that are not native plants. Now, that being said, in certain circumstances, native plants don't always grow well in really altered soils. So some of our soils here, like I mentioned, was an industrial site, and it's not the native soil that was here. So some of our native plants that are more sensitive probably would not do very well. So we really have to be deliberate where we plant the native plant species to make sure that they will thrive in those conditions. And then we do also want to highlight landscape plants that may not be native but will do well in this area. We are very careful about picking plants that may become problematic down the road, such as invasive plant species. And so I personally am always monitoring, what is becoming invasive. We've even noticed things like crepe myrtles and butterfly bush that are very, very commonly planted are showing some tendencies of actually starting to show up in natural environments, which is not a great thing. But that's something that we can educate the public on when they come out here, and that's why we're here. Not only is it a place for people to enjoy being out in nature, it's also a place for them to learn about best gardening practices for our area. This is the future home of our children's garden, and the purpose of the children's garden is to provide some hands-on learning and exploration opportunities for children who come out with their families, and also be able to offer classes maybe for preschool or early childhood development. And right now we just have the area fenced in so that parents and caregivers feel comfortable letting their children run free. But eventually we'll have a lot of features in here. We'll have a lot of plants, little garden beds. This actually is going to have a cow panel trellis so that the children walk through a tunnel of vines and other plants. And there'll be loose play parts and a mud kitchen, balance beams. So basically just an area where children get to interact and explore nature and learning about plants and gardening. So we're all excited about this area of the garden to come into being, and that's our big project for 2021. So check back in about a year, and hopefully this area will be about finished. So this is our raised bed vegetable garden, and here we demonstrate different ways that people can grow food at home. We have various raised beds and also some different containers. And so really what we do here is we demonstrate best practices for growing different vegetables. Eventually we will have some fruit, blueberries and figs, and even some muscadine grapevines. But for now we're doing vegetables. And you can see some lovely kale in the back. But this area we also use for school groups that come out. So 4-H and other kids will come out, and we'll teach classes for how to grow your own vegetables. So this is a gazebo that was built and donated by the Realtors Association. So this whole project of the Discovery Gardens was made possible by a lot of different groups of people, and so I think it's worth mentioning that it is a big undertaking. So we've had donations from community groups. The county government owns the property, and they also help the Parks and Recreation staff help us manage our turf areas and any other big projects that we might need. Most of the labor within the actual gardens is done by volunteers, the Master Gardener volunteers, and some of the staff with Cooperative Extension. So it is a big undertaking, it is a lot of work, but it's a really beautiful space and we're lucky to have it. And again, this gazebo would be perfect for a wedding or another event, and people, like I mentioned, can rent this space for those types of things. So right here we have we have an herb garden, and then what you'll see is our biocells, which Diana will talk more about with the stormwater aspect of this place. But the biocells are actually pretty challenging to plant because they're designed to drain really well and also to capture water. So what happens is when we have a heavy rain, they'll capture the water and it'll fill up, and then eventually it'll drain out as that water filters into the ground. So the plants we put here have to be pretty adaptable to those conditions. A lot of what's growing on the edges of the biocells have to be very drought tolerant because that soil can be very, very dry when we don't have a lot of rain. And then the plants in the bottom have to be able to withstand occasionally very wet conditions. So we have things like bald cypress and river birch, winterberry holly. We have a lot of grasses like muhly grass that do well under those conditions. So we really have to adapt our plantings to what we're working with the biocells. And then in the back you can see the stormwater pond, which I believe Diana will also talk about a little bit as well. So I'm going to next show you the pollinator garden area and then our wildlife garden area as we continue on our tour. This is our pollinator garden area, and being winter, there's not a whole lot going on, but we really try to plant a lot of flowering shrubs and perennials to support pollinators. And you'll also notice that we haven't cut back the perennials yet, and we're going to wait as long as possible to do that. Even though a lot of people like to clean up their yards as soon as it looks brown, we choose to keep them because a lot of native bees will actually nest in the stems of these plants. And also there's still some seeds on here that birds will eat. So we do try in this section in the wildlife garden really to minimize our use of pesticides and also practice leaving it a little messy for the wildlife and the pollinators. So I would definitely recommend coming out here in spring and summer into the fall, and there will be a lot of beautiful flowers blooming and a lot of butterflies and bees flying all around the pollinator garden. So the last place on our tour is our wildlife garden, and this is one of the first areas of the garden that we really worked on getting planted. There was a lot of interest from the Master Gardener volunteers to get this area together, and it's really coming together well. There's a lot of native plants in this area. I'd say most of these plants are native to help support wildlife. Some are not native, but they still provide benefits to wildlife, like some of these little evergreen shrubs that provide cover. We do put out feeders for the birds here as well, and you know, a source of water. And I have seen a baby raccoon, a baby possum, tons of different kinds of birds, snakes, all kinds of wildlife. We've even had somebody see an otter in the stormwater pond. So it definitely is a wildlife garden, and it is a really beautiful place to come and learn about supporting wildlife in your backyard. Something that we are doing is we are considered an eco hotspot. It's a program through the North Carolina Arboretum that encourages children to get involved in citizen science. And so eventually we'll have spots out here and maybe a scavenger hunt where kids can come out and learn about different things in nature. So we are trying to encourage people to come out and enjoy this beautiful space, and also be good stewards and help people have support wildlife in their own backyards. So I hope you enjoyed the tour, and if you have any questions, I'm sure my information will be shared, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Hello, I'm Diana Rashash. I'm the Area Specialized Agent for Water Quality and Waste Management here in the Southeast District, where I cover 18 different counties as well as other counties upon request. We are here this afternoon at the Onslow County office, where I'm going to talk a little bit about our rain and our stormwater control situation and how we are handling it here. Way back long ago, when we first moved into this building around 2001, none of what you see here was here. It was bare ground. Around the mid-2000s, we put in the farmer's market and the parking lot associated with it, and we also put in this entry circle and the parking area that you see back here. With that, we had to upgrade or update the stormwater permit. And they discovered at that time that not only were they going to have to increase the size of our stormwater pond, but it had been undersized to begin with. And so it wasn't just making it larger for the new additions, it was also bringing it up from that first 1 inch of rain harvested to 1.5 inches of rain being captured. So our stormwater pond would have exploded in size and taken up a large area of our land back here, which would have shrunk the Discovery Garden and the things we were able to do. So with that, they were trying to come up with alternatives. So what could we do to reduce the amount of water going to the stormwater pond? And that's when we put in the cisterns. With our rainwater harvesting system, we have 6 cisterns, each of which is 2,500 gallons, giving us a total of 15,000 gallons of capacity. 4 of the tanks are along the backside of our main building. The other 2 tanks are on the backside of the farmer's market. The 4 tanks on the backside of the building are all installed level with each other and have pipes underground connecting them to each other, so we only have the one pump that handles pumping out of one tank, and the others all continue to equalize the volume that's in there. Same thing with the 2 on the back side of the farmer's market. Those 2 are connected to each other, so again, one pump being able to pump out the water from both tanks. The financing for getting the cistern system came through the CCAP program to buy the tanks and all the assorted pipes, and there were a lot of pipes. There were 6-inch pipes, 4-inch pipes, 2-inch pipes, and 1-inch pipes. So pipes all over, and you can see some of the pipes here. We have the underground pipes that feed into the tank, so this is considered a wet system in that the water comes down the building, underground, up the side of the tank, and drops into the top of the tank. So unlike a dry system like we have on the farmer's market, where it comes down into the gutter, into the pipe, into the tank, drops into the top of the tank. When it stops raining, those pipes turn dry. When these stop raining, you're still going to have water level to the top of that U from one side to the other side. To keep that water from standing in there, there are 1-inch pipes that are tapped into those 6-inch pipes that all connect together, and then we have an outlet down here so that the water is able to drain out the bottom of it. The pipes that are in the ground have to be deep enough that we don't have any freezing issues, and we've never had any issues with these tanks in the 10 years that they've been in the ground, because they were installed in 2011. Just recently, and within the last 2 years, with the irrigation system going in, the tanks were connected to that irrigation system, which helps with their water usage. Prior to that, they were connected by a pump to hoses, and the Master Gardener volunteers and the horticulture agent would utilize them out in the gardens. Now, with it being connected to the irrigation system, it's able to go out there automatically to the different zones. It's also connected to the pump so that as it drains down, if they're having to water a large area, the well will fill it back up part way. It will not fill it up to the top because they want to keep capacity in there for a rain event to occur. And now I'll go ahead and take you to some of the other stormwater systems that we have in the Discovery Garden itself. We have a variety of swales and bioinfiltration basins, which are glorified rain gardens, here in the Discovery Gardens. So from the parking areas, we have a swale here that's piped underneath the sidewalk that I'm standing on into this bioinfiltration basin. As with any site, there are differences in the soil types from one side of our location to the other. This particular side of our site has a lot of clay and has an infiltration rate of about 0.52 inches per hour, which is about the minimum you could have to be able to put in a bioinfiltration basin. The other side of our site is much sandier and has about an 8 to 10 inch per hour infiltration rate. So with this side, we had a very wet spring after the system was installed, and we actually had a tadpole kill. So it had standing water in it. We were having a hard time with the plants because they kept wanting to drown on us. And when it finally dried out, all the tadpoles died. So we ended up putting an under drain in here that's tapped into the overflow drain. And since then, it's been working quite well. It's wintertime now, so everything is dormant. But in the spring and summer, we have a lot of different vegetation in here blooming. In the fall, we have a lot of flowers. We have the swamp sunflowers. We have ferns and a lot of other plants that are in here as well. We've never had the water get high enough in here to actually overflow. In fact, we haven't had the water get high enough in any of the bioinfiltration basins to overflow into the grate. If it ever did overflow, what it would do is then travel through a pipe that would take it to the stormwater pond. So the bioinfiltration basins have been fulfilling their purpose of taking stormwater that lands on the site, gets directed into the bioinfiltration basins and infiltrating it into the ground so that it does not go into the stormwater pond. It again relieves some of the pressure on that. So now I'll take you to a couple of our other bioinfiltration basins. Where I'm standing right now is a perfect example of just how quickly soil types can change. To my right is one of our bioinfiltration basins that has the excellent infiltration rate. And you can see it's fairly deep. And on my left, we have another bioinfiltration basin that is much shallower in depth, and it has that 0.52 inches per hour infiltration rate. So again, one side of the sidewalk that I'm on has slower infiltration. The other side of the sidewalk that I'm standing on has much higher infiltration. So somewhere in here, we start having a clay layer, and the other side still remains mainly sand, which just goes to indicate how important it is to get information on the soils before putting these types of systems into the ground. So with the one that needs the slower rate, this one also ended up with the under drains put in it. The one on my right side, no under drains required, and it does very well. We had a reverse problem with it, and because it is so sandy, it was harder to stabilize the banks. So after the first couple of years with big rain events, we'd have to come out here and inspect all around it to see where we might have had a washout occur as the water came across the field and down the side slopes. And so the horticulture agent and the master gardener volunteers spent a lot of time with me stomping the banks back into place and putting vegetation back in. It's been years since we've had a blowout like that occur, but going around and inspecting these infiltration units as well as the whole stormwater system is one of the things that I'm required to do after a design rainfall event. So I'm required to do it after every 1.5 inch storm. I'm required to do it at least once a month, but I usually, since it's right here behind my office, I usually come out here and take a walk around and see what's going on at the site. Last stop is here at that much maligned stormwater pond. We have the forebay here on my right and the main basin on my left. You can probably notice on the screen that they are two different colors. The forebay is quite dark, whereas the main basin is a lighter sort of murkyish color. So one theory we have on that is with sediment coming in over the years that the clay has been sedimented on with this other material, and so we don't have the clay dispersing within the water column after rain events. Whereas on the other side, because it is that clearer, cleaner water that's flowing into it from the forebay, that we don't have that organic loading sealing off that bottom material, and so we keep getting the clay being resuspended in there. Over the years, we've had quite a bit of vegetation. The rushes have seemed to like it the best. We have had a couple of grasses come in. We also have pickerel weed. We did not plant the rushes that you see here in the forebay. They've migrated in there themselves, probably from seed material from the main pool. We've had pretty good luck with this stormwater pond, even though it's technically undersized. It takes a really big event for it to get all the way up to the top of the outlet grate to overflow through the main large pipe. Usually the smaller outlet pipe is able to handle every event that we've had out here. Of course, we've had a few really big events, and those have taxed the system quite a bit. Also, when we have repeat rain events, because the stormwater pond is designed to drain down within 3 to 5 days to be able to handle the next storm event. When we've had weeks where we've gone rain, maybe a day off, then another big rain, and maybe a day off, then a rain, and it accumulates a lot over a short period of time. It's hard for it to keep up, just like with any other system, and we've had the water get quite high during those times. But all in all, it's been a well-behaved system, and with the bioinfiltration basins taking the pressure off of it, as well as harvesting the 15,000 gallons of capacity of rainwater, everything's been working quite well for well over a decade now.